Greetings, friends. It's Heidi with Heidonian Living, and today's segment is on focusing on doing what you can rather than focusing on what you can't. You know, one of the things that I really had to work hard to retrain my brain, and honestly, it's still an ongoing process, is when looking at a challenge, whether it's a positive or a difficult challenge, whether it's an opportunity, being it business, personal growth, spiritual, whatever, you know, we have a tendency to look at all the reasons why it won't work or why we can't or why we're not enough. And one of the things that I found that really has made a big difference for me is really training my brain to switch gears and say, okay, let's not focus on what we can't do. Let's focus on what can I do? And that does several things. One, it really opens up your spirit of openness to the possibilities of how to solve the problem or create the capacity or whatever it is that you need. And it also energizes you and helps you look, you find what you look for. And so when you're looking for how will this work? How can I make this happen versus why it won't? It immediately changes your outlook, your perspective, and the things that you perceive. And of course, prayerfully praying over that makes a huge impact, I believe personally as well. At least it has for me. So let's take an example. Let's make this more concrete. You know, something that's really near and dear to my heart is my food choices in this season. That's something near and dear, meaning like it's a challenge, right? That is still an area that is super challenging for me, is making good, healthy food choices. And so I've been doing a lot of reading and research and study, not near like some people, but definitely for me, relatively speaking, learning, praying, thinking about, okay, what's the best course for me to make changes in this area? And really in the flesh, I just want to throw up my hands and say, you know what? I'm always going to be broken in this area. I just am a sugar addict. I can't do this. I don't have the self-discipline. How many times in my life have I done it before? You know, blah, 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 blah. All this, why it won't work for me. And I can get overwhelmed, you know, even with the thought of all the different food plans that are out there and all the different ways, you know, there's keto and Whole30 and there's Atkins and there's, you know, Weight Watcher. There's just all these systems that all work if you work them, right? And each one thinks they're the most healthy way. And so it can just be completely overwhelming. And so I could stay in this place of just being totally locked up and throwing up my hands and saying, this is overwhelming. It's too much. I can't do this. And honestly, I was at that place a few days ago. And then I thought, okay, Heidi, what principles have served you well in the past that could help you keep moving forward in this area rather than being locked up? And so that is that question of, okay, so instead of looking at what I can't do, let's focus on what I can do. And what I can do is make small changes. That's what I know I can do. And so it starts as simple as being on purpose to when I make my grocery list, some of my staples that I always purchase repeatedly, how can I move those to if not exactly the most healthy option, how can I move towards that direction? How can I move towards that? And so I did a few things, like I ordered real maple syrup instead of imitation maple syrup. Now it sounds so simple, right? But I could spend the rest of my life trying to strive for this perfection that I'll never be able to achieve, versus if I just do a little bit what I can right now in this season, the impact will be huge over the long haul of my life. And I think of the example of weaning myself off of coffee with creamer and sugar in it. It took me, you know, I think it took me almost a year to go from somebody who only drank coffee with lots of cream and lots of sugar to now I prefer it black. But I knew myself. I knew if I went cold turkey, I couldn't do it for very long. Or it would be short-lived, and then I would rebel in the flesh and go back to even worse than where I started. And so I just slowly, a little bit every week, like 1 week at a time, I reduced first the amount of sugar in my coffee because I knew cream was more important to me as far as the flavor. And so it took me, you know, several months to be to the place where I had no sugar in my coffee. And then I slowly did it with creamer. And now here I am years later where I actually prefer black coffee. Like if I do get something that has all that extra in it, I think, ugh, why did I order this? I prefer black coffee now. So some books that really helped me with this mindset too are The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy and The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. I really feel like those books are hand in hand. Really, they're the same book by different authors. I prefer Darren Hardy's version, but it's all about that compound effect of, little bit makes a big difference. And I'll do a book recommendation on those in the future. But I just want to challenge you, in what area of your life have you chosen to be overwhelmed and make no changes or give up on yourself in because you've been focusing on what you can't do versus saying, where do I have opportunities? What can I do? It may not be what's going to get me all the way to my version of success, but what could start the ball rolling in the right direction? Or, another example might be that you really wish that you had time to work out. Well, we have to be intentional about that. And I would love to say, okay, I'm going to start working out 5 times a week and I'm going to get a trainer and I'm going to go to the gym and da-da-da-da. But I know myself well enough to know, and this is all part of knowing yourself, that for me, little, steady, and grow from there. And so I started January 1st. So it's been, almost 7 months now. And I simply started out with saying, okay, I'm going to stretch every morning because that'll take me less than 10 minutes. And I'm going to walk for at least 20 minutes most days. And you know what? Here I am 7 months later, and that has turned into 30 minutes of walking every day. Is that going to get me the same results as going to a trainer 3 or 4 or 5 times a week? No, but I just know myself well enough to know I wouldn't be able to do that for forever. Now, maybe eventually I'll grow that habit muscle and I maybe will be able to do that. But rather than letting what I'm not willing to do or what I can't do or what finances don't allow or energy or capacity or season to stop me from doing anything at all, what can I do? So what can you do? What area do you want to shift that focus, make a small adjustment that can have a huge impact over the long haul and start building that habit muscle? I hope this helps you become more of who you're called to be and find freedom in the process.